watching news at Prime. Let's get you this conversation now. Basic Education Minister Severo Kwahube has raised concerns over the growing underrepresentation of boys in grade 12. The class of 2025 saw a national pass rate of 88%, with the high number of female candidates overall. Kwahube says the department is working on initiatives to support boys and address the root causes of their disengagement. Let's take a listen for a moment.
I'm deeply concerned about the trend that we're seeing, particularly for boys between grade 10 and grade 12. And I was having an interesting conversation with an expert last night who was saying that just even in between, yes, we can look and track at the learners between DBE and DHET, but we may have a problem where we may have to even engage, portfolios such as DSD, such as the SAPs, to find out whether or not are our boys not falling into criminality, are our boys not dropping out because of drug use. And these things matter because, Iman, what we don't want is we don't want an overcorrection that then leaves the boy children behind, because that has a massive impact just on society in general. So I think we've got our work cut out for us, but I'm reminded that some work has been done in this regard. And I think as DBE, we need to revisit it and really try and figure out and find out and track where our boys are ending up.
All right, let's unpack these results now. And I'm joined by Professor Jonathan Jansen, Professor of Education at Stellenbosch University. Professor, good evening to you. Thank you very much for your time. Your overall assessment of the 88 national pass rate, including KZN, leading all of the 9 provinces.
Yeah, these results, are quite meaningless. As you know, over the past several years, the constant increase in the results have defied both statistical and political gravity. But it's quite meaningless to have a 0.7 percent increase and then saying this is the best ever. And the reason, this hyping up of the results is as somebody who's been working intensely in a high school the past 2 years and for many years in my career, is that the truth. The truth is not what you heard from the minister. The truth is that, as she correctly said, particularly between grades 10 and 12, I mean, there's almost half of the kids who start in grade 2 just don't make it to grade 12. So what are we celebrating? We are celebrating a relatively small percentage of kids who started school in South Africa finishing 12 years of schooling. That is an embarrassment, And so what we need to turn to is not this annual performance, this theater. We need to sort of say, given that international comparisons with other comparable countries always puts us at the bottom in science and math, we need to, given that we know from international tests that, more than 80% of our kids can't read in grade 4. What does all of this mean? It's nothing. Okay, all it means is a small percentage of kids got through. Secondly, an even smaller percentage of them got bachelor's passes, which is university readiness. And in the gateway subjects, the subjects that power careers, that power the economy, that is mathematics, physics, and so on, we've actually seen either stagnation or a drop. We dropped by 5% of the small number of students, I think it's 34%, who actually do write pure math. And even accountancy came down by 3%. So I don't know why we do this, I've got an article in the Times tomorrow, on Thursday, that tries to get behind the political psychology of this celebration. I think it's time for South Africans to wake up and realize that, especially with the very low, the minister made a very weak attempt to explain away 30%. In any other country, a minister would be fired if he said people who obtain 30% are, quote, differently talented. Are you serious?
Professor?
No, this is not on.
Yeah, you're already touching on my next question, but I have to take you back. When you say these results are meaningless, I would want for the minister, hopefully, that she's listening to this conversation, because she may argue that the professor is being unfair because there are more and more university entries that are being achieved by these students. And talking about the 30%, the so-called 30% pass rate, she pushed back strongly against this, actually labeling it propaganda. So are we producing quality over quantity here? Because I think that's the nub or the essence of what you are driving towards.
I don't know what the minister's standing is in education policy and theory. She doesn't come, this is something I've studied all my life. And I can tell you now, and also studying this comparatively, and I can tell you now that the real test is, as I said, the international comparisons on the one hand, where we always lost. But secondly, the high failure rate of those who do get into university, even with bachelor's passes, right? So we know that time to degree is among the lowest on the continent. And we know that the high failure rate in the first year, it reflects back on the meaningless of these results. And we know for a fact, I don't know what the minister's talking about, or who's misinforming her, but there are still subjects that you can pass with 30%. That is a fact. I've been going through individual exam marks with the principal of a school all morning. There are people passing with 30%. So, listening to the minister, I have to say, it was like listening to a Trump cabinet meeting. You hype up the results and you slam the critics.
Sure. That's very harsh. Professor, let's talk about the disconnect between South Africa's education outcomes and the demands that the economy is looking for, or in other words, economic opportunity. How's the country faring on that score? Are we producing the kind of students at the end of university that the economy is looking for?
We don't, but the roots of this lies in the school curriculum. So, if I had to redesign the basic education system, the first thing I would make sure is that every child can read and write at the grade level. I would make sure that every child is competent in artificial intelligence, in coding and robotics. The department just removed those programs because they didn't have money for it. I would make sure that, a child leaving could leave with like the Maritime Academy in Simonstown, with the experience and the technical qualifications to be able to enter the maritime industry. I would do those kinds of pivots, but we're not doing that. And so we are not preparing. Our students are at a huge disadvantage when it comes to economic participation and the technological skills that are required. And universities do an equally bad job, and I say this as a professor, in not preparing young people in the kinds of things that are energizing the new economy. If you just look internationally, what's really driving up, as you know, stock markets and all of this is artificial intelligence or data centers and all of that. Yeah. We don't even begin to think about that or prepare our students accordingly.
Can I quickly talk about the gateway subjects? Because when you talk AI, I think that's where mathematics and physical science comes in. You add to that accounting. I want to go back to what the minister said earlier about the boy child being left behind. But before we get there, talk to us about these gateway subjects. The minister acknowledging regression on 2 of those, but I think she said on accounting, there is progress being made. How are we doing on that score?
No, it's not true. She said that both accounting and pure math have dropped by 3% and 5% respectively. And in physical science, which is the other big gateway subject, it has ticked up by 1%.
Yes.
So what you have here is not just that, the pass rate in that subject is low. It's that the cohort, the participation in the huge cohort, almost over 1 million people writing, right? But only a small percentage of them even showing up to write the exams in those subjects. We screwed. This is huge. And if you just take pure math, for example, I can tell you now, there are universities that even look at your math marks when you're doing a BA degree, because it's not about the math. It is about logic. It's the ability to think for yourself. It's the ability to work out different options to solving a quadratic equation. It's about those kinds of skills, that actually apply across disciplines.
Grade 10 to 12, those grades are critical in assessing whether the boy child remains in the schooling system or there is this dropout and we don't know what these boys are getting up to. That is the minister's worry. What could be the contributing factor or factors there?
Again, I've worked in a school for 2 years on the Cape Flats. Okay, the minister is disingenuous. This has got nothing to do with her. It's got nothing to do with her portfolio. I have students who come to school every day, and I teach physics at this school. And those kids dodge bullets every single day. Okay, fathers are in Paulsmoor prison, mothers are on crystal meth or tick. Okay, grandparents raise the kids if the kids are lucky. These are deep, complex sociological issues, okay? And for the minister to pretend that they're thinking about plans about how to solve it, where has she been? The past, since the Group Areas Act threw people all over the Cape Flats, for example, just as one part of the country. So these are very demanding, complex issues that people have grappled with for decades about how to solve these problems. And I'm afraid education and the CAPS curriculum is not going to change any of that.
Final question to you, Professor. KZN has pipped the Free State province for the very first time after that province has led being number one throughout the years. Talk to us about what you think they have done differently. How did KZN manage this?
I have no idea. As an old Free State, I have to tell you, I'm a bit sad about that, because I know, the former MEC, the late MEC, did an amazing job with, and I know what the Free State did was to bring in partners, not the government, but to bring in, the private sector, to bring in the universities, and we worked together wonderfully to change that. What happened in KZN, I can assure you, I'm going to poke my nose into that, but I don't think people should speculate about why those results went up. I think we need to take a closer look, to be fair.
Professor Jonathan Jansen, thank you very much indeed for your time and insights. A professor of education at Stellenbosch University. All right, still to come on News at Prime.